Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming.
Low battery.
My name is Michael Simpson, and I am the acting United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Louisiana. Before we get started, though, I would like to introduce our law enforcement partners who are here with me today. Right next to me, to my left, is Jonathan Tapp, who is the special agent in charge for the FBI. Right next to him is Mr. Percy Giles, who is the assistant special agent in charge at the FBI. And next to Mr. Giles is Ms. Samira Maroney, who is the supervisory special agent that oversaw this case. Earlier today, a federal grand jury returned an 18-count superseding indictment charging New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell and former New Orleans Police Department officer Jeffrey Paul Vappy II. They are charged with a series of fraud, obstruction of justice, and false statement offenses for their role in a nearly 3-year fraud scheme that we allege exploited their public authority and positions. The indictment alleges that in October of 2021, Mayor Cantrell and Jeffrey Vappy, a member of her executive protection team, developed a personal, intimate relationship. From that time until Mr. Vappy's retirement in June of 2024, they embarked on a scheme to defraud the City of New Orleans and the New Orleans Police Department. By exploiting Vappy's job and Cantrell's authority as mayor to have the city and the New Orleans Police Department pay Vappy's salary and expenses during the times that Vappy claimed to be on duty, but when he was actually engaged in personal activities, usually with Ms. Cantrell, but sometimes alone at the Pentaba apartment. The indictment further describes the many steps that Cantrell and Vappy took to hide their scheme and to perpetuate their continued fraud, including using a secure messaging platform, WhatsApp. Specifically, Cantrell and Vappy used the WhatsApp platform to exchange over 15,000 messages, pictures, and audio clips in an 8-month period. They also used WhatsApp to intimidate subordinates, to harass a citizen, to lie to colleagues and associates, to delete evidence, to make false statements to FBI agents, to give the government an affidavit signed under oath that contained numerous false statements, and ultimately to commit perjury before a federal grand jury, all for the purpose of distracting and impeding inquiries and investigations into their activities, including a federal grand jury investigation. The superseding indictment, which we emphasize is merely a charge for which guilt must be proven beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law, alleges that Mayor Cantrell and Mr. Vappy perpetuated their scheme both in the New Orleans area and during out-of-state trips. In both instances, Vappy's activities, while claiming to be on duty, were conspicuously different than any other member of the Executive Protection Unit. While in New Orleans, Cantrell and Vappy treated a city-owned apartment in the Pentaba building as their own personal shared residence and coordinated to spend time together there, engaging in personal activities, all while Vappy claimed to be on duty for the Executive Protection Unit and was being paid to do his actual job. The superseding indictment also alleges that Mayor Cantrell and Vappy arranged for Vappy to accompany Cantrell on at least 14 domestic and international trips to maximize their time together and to engage in personal activities. In their private text messages, Mayor Cantrell characterized her trips with Vappy as both, quote, times when we are truly alone, close quote, and as what, quote, spoils me the most. These trips included a trip to San Francisco, which Vappy and Cantrell decided to extend for an extra day so that they could visit a series of Napa Valley wineries. While Vappy was wine tasting on April the 9th, 2022, he claimed to be working and was in fact paid for working a 15-hour day. In August 2022, Cantrell said that she would, quote, unquote, make it happen, to have Vappy accompany her on a 3-day trip to Washington, D.C. for a 1-hour meeting, a trip that they both agreed they, quote unquote, needed. Shortly after they returned, Vappy described the trip to Cantrell as, quote, another leg on our journey, close quote, as he declared his love for her and their physical relationship. In total, the city of New Orleans paid over $70,000 for Vappy's travel on these trips alone. When asked about her reason for bringing members of the Executive Protection Unit with her on out-of-state trips, a practice that Mayor Cantrell began about 5 months after Vappy joined the Executive Protection Unit, she justified it as a quote-unquote pivot due to COVID and a matter of safety, in quotes. At the same time, however, she continued to take out-of-state trips without any EPU protection or Executive Protective Unit protection. In fact, on the same day, she gave one such statement. She canceled a work trip to Miami and instead traveled alone by plane, then bus, then ferry to the island of Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts to spend some time with Vappy. Vappy was in Martha's Vineyard attending a conference paid for by the city of New Orleans related to his position on the Hanno Board of Commissioners, a position to which Cantrell had appointed him just months earlier. On other occasions, when Vappy was unavailable to accompany Cantrell on a trip, Cantrell chose not to take another member of the Executive Protection Unit with her. The superseding indictment alleges that both Vappy and Cantrell were aware that their conduct broke laws, criminal laws. For instance, in April 2022, an associate of Cantrell's explicitly told her in multiple text messages that spending public funds and using public resources for her personal relationship was illegal. When Vappy and Cantrell learned that the news media was investigating their time together in the Pentalba, they agreed amongst themselves to be, quote, unquote, straight and together. Days after the first news stories broke in November of 2022, Vappy conducted numerous online searches for New Orleans area attorneys who specialize in the practice of criminal law. And he researched WhatsApp's security features. But the defendant's wire fraud scheme nevertheless continued all the way until Vappy's retirement in June of 2024. As alleged in the superseding indictment, in July 2023, the grand jury issued subpoenas to both Vappy and Cantrell, compelling the production of records. The FBI also interviewed Vappy, and during the interview, Vappy lied about the nature and circumstances of his relationship with Cantrell. In response to the subpoena, Cantrell produced a selection of responsive records, but none of the over 15,000 WhatsApp messages that she had exchanged with Vappy. Cantrell also created an affidavit, sworn under oath, that in 2021 she had activated a feature on her phone that automatically deleted messages. In support of that statement in her affidavit, Cantrell submitted a screenshot of her iPhone showing WhatsApp messages were set to delete in 24 hours. But in fact, Cantrell did not turn on that feature until December the 26th, 2022, roughly 1 month after the news media began speculating on her conduct. Moreover, this automatic deletion or quote-unquote disappearing messages feature only applied to new messages. During roughly the same period, Cantrell also manually deleted thousands of her prior WhatsApp messages with Vappy. As alleged, even at the time that Cantrell responded to the grand jury subpoena, she still possessed more than 50 pictures, including screenshots of correspondence with Vappy that were responsive to the subpoena, but which she nevertheless concealed from the grand jury. On his own, Vappy conducted online searches concerning WhatsApp and its security level, and by which time several people had already warned Vappy and Cantrell that their conduct was illegal. The indictment further alleges that Vappy and Cantrell continued their pattern of obstruction through the rest of 2023 and 2024. This obstruction included improperly pressuring the interim superintendent of the New Orleans Police Department to overrule findings of an internal investigation into Vappy's conduct. When the interim superintendent did not heed that directive, Cantrell ordered the interim superintendent to nevertheless reassign Vappy back to her protection detail. Months later, in a meeting that Vappy attended, Mayor Cantrell informed the interim superintendent that the interim superintendent would be replaced. Similarly, when a private citizen took pictures of Mayor Cantrell and Vappy together in public, dining and consuming alcohol al fresco, while Vappy reported to be on duty, Cantrell filed a police report and sought a restraining order against that citizen. This indictment does not allege that a relationship constitutes a crime. It also does not allege that the criminal activity occurred on merely a handful of discrete days, or that the behavior was limited to a small series of discrete actions. Rather, it reflects the prosecution of two public officials alleged to have engaged in a years-long continuing fraud scheme that used public money for personal ends by exploiting their power and their authority. The superseding indictment alleges that they perpetuated that fraud scheme by taking steps to keep individuals silent, to deceive subordinates, and to obstruct investigations into their relationship, including one conducted by a federal grand jury. I'd like to make several things clear, if I may. First, my office remains steadfast in its commitment to rooting out public corruption in any form without fear or favor within the Eastern District of Louisiana. And by the term public corruption, I mean public officials exploiting their positions and their power for their own personal gain. Public officials should be in their jobs to serve the public and not themselves. To do otherwise is a breach of the trust that undermines the public's faith and trust in their own government. Second, this investigation remains ongoing, and I would encourage anyone with information to come forward and to do so quickly. They can do so by contacting the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or at fbi.gov, submit a tip. As I close today, I wish to emphasize that our investigations and our prosecutions go wherever the evidence takes us. Today's superseding indictment is the culmination of a lengthy and a deliberate investigative process in the ultimate pursuit of justice. No decision in this case was made lightly. I'd like to recognize the dedication at this time of the career prosecutors handling the case. To my right, Supervisory Assistant U.S. Attorney Jordan Ginsburg, who is Chief of the Public Corruption Unit, and AUSA Assistant U.S. Attorney Nicholas D. Moses of the Financial Crimes Unit and our Healthcare Fraud Coordinator. These men were ably assisted by numerous staff members of our office who dedicated their time and energy to assist them. I also specifically recognize the supervision of Tracy Knight, who is our criminal chief and has done a wonderful job in supervising this investigation and this prosecution. Individually and collectively, I am proud of this office's collaborative, professional, selfless, and unrelenting efforts. But such a case as this requires really tremendous partnership, and we have been blessed to have such. I want to thank the members of the Federal Bureau of Investigation's New Orleans Field Office, led by Special Agent in Charge Jonathan Tapp, and his team members, Assistant Special Agent in Charge Percy Giles, and also ably assisted by Supervisory Special Agent Samira Maroney. The FBI spearheaded this investigation and have been with us on this matter from day one. The tireless work of FBI's agents, analysts, and support personnel deserves very special credit. I'd also like to recognize the indispensable contributions made by the Cybercrime Lab of the Department of Justice's Computer Crimes and Intellectual Property Section. Finally, I'd like to thank and recognize the New Orleans Office of Inspector General and the Metropolitan Crime Commission for their great cooperation in this case and their dedication to identifying and reporting corrupt and unethical activity by public officials. I'd now like to invite up to the podium to say a few words FBI Special Agent in Charge of the New Orleans Field Office, Jonathan Tapp.
Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Good afternoon. I'm Jonathan Tapp, Special Agent in Charge of the FBI here in New Orleans. Unchecked public corruption undermines the roots of our great republic. The citizens of this nation expect their public officials to uphold the public's trust, and the FBI investigates breaches of that trust that constitute violations of federal law. The citizens of New Orleans work hard to provide for their families, and they expect their public officials to be honest stewards of those funds. And today's indictment outlines a betrayal of that trust by Mayor Cantrell and Mr. Vappy. The FBI has a duty and obligation to investigate and work with the U.S. Attorney's Office and our partners to hold individuals accountable who put their interests ahead of those they've sworn to serve. No one is above the law. The charges outlined today are very serious, and they emphasize the importance of accountability. Today's superseding indictment is the result of painstaking work by FBI special agents, forensic accountants, and analysts who investigated every lead and piece of evidence discovered in this case. A strong criminal case is built on facts, and the investigative process to uncover those facts, bless you, can take days or even years. But the FBI is committed to the people of New Orleans and Louisiana to methodically address every element of an investigation, and that's exactly what we did here. The indictment speaks for itself. It outlines just some of the information uncovered in our investigation. The full scope of the investigation will become available through the adjudicatory process. I want to thank the Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Louisiana, and especially the Computer Crimes and Intellectual Property Section Cybercrime Lab and its critical assistance here. I also want to thank the Metropolitan Crime Commission in particular for its help along the way. We appreciate the public's interest in this case and encourage anyone with information about this case or other violations of the public's trust to call the FBI. We can't do this job alone. With the help of the public and our partners, we will continue to carry out our mission of protecting the people of Louisiana and the United States. Thank you.
So everyone, I guess this is the time for you all to do your work. We have time for some questions. Of course, I listened to my manager right there, Shane Jones. So, but please feel free to ask away, and forgive me if I drink water during the
Mr.
process.
Simpson?
Yes, sir.
David Hammer, WWL. Did you take pause at all about bringing criminal charges that at the heart are based on a romantic relationship, especially with the first woman mayor of the city of New Orleans?
To me, it's irrelevant that it's romance or that it's female. What is relevant is that it is an incredible breach of the public trust. It's an incredible betrayal of people's confidence in their own government, and it's a violation of innumerable federal criminal laws. That's what's important to me as a prosecutor. My job is to participate in the investigation and prosecution of federal law. Who breaks federal law and their particular characteristics is really irrelevant to what we do. We follow the evidence, we follow the law wherever it leads, and we do our jobs.
Mr. Simpson, can you please speak to the Cox statement? Can you speak to some of the challenges in prosecuting this case, as there's been denial after denial, of course, related to also having false statements in front of the grand jury? And then also, if you could speak to it all, whether the grand jury has been released from subpoena, if they're going to continue to sit and hear more aspects of this case at all, or if there is any other grand jury proceedings pending?
Well, I can't comment on the grand jury because of, obviously, very strict grand jury secrecy rules and regulations. What I can say is that the investigation in this matter is decidedly ongoing. And whatever leads, whatever information we get that is actionable, that we can develop into evidence that indicates additional federal crimes or individual players in any or all of this, we will pursue.
And then the first part of my question about how, the challenges of just, of constantly, in your own words, making false statements in front of the grand jury. I mean, what are the challenges to be constantly kind of reiterated by the mayor that the allegations are false?
What are the consequences? The consequences are criminal. And when they become criminal, when the falsity of those statements is established by evidence, it proves their falsity. That's the consequences. And people can say what they want, clearly in their own defense, and the mayor is absolutely correct in exercising her right to do so. What I would say is the ultimate judge of all of this is the evidence that we have developed that forms the basis of this superseding indictment.
Cassie
Thank
Sherman,
you.
WDSU. So in the documents, it alleges other people knew about these actions. Could there be any more indictments further past this from public officials?
Well, I can't answer that right now because, as I indicated, our investigation continues. So the possibilities are open. We don't know. I can't predict one way or another, and I'd be inaccurate if I said I had any sense of that. But I assure you, when I said that this is still a vital and ongoing and active investigation, it is.
The people that you guys were seeing the text messages that were warning the mayor, did you guys talk to them in person or have an interview?
I think the reason why we have evidence is because it is supported by reality. So I won't comment on specifically the evidence, but one thing I've learned as a federal prosecutor over a long time is that you really don't say anything unless you can back it up pretty definitively.
And
The
then my
date-
last question, just real quick. In the past, the mayor has said these allegations have been politically motivated. What would you say back to that?
I'd say that's a nice defense. That's a defense that you would use in court.
The dates of the charges go back to 2024, or go as late as 2024. Why not wait until she's out of office in just a few months? And are you concerned about how having a mayor under indictment will affect the administration of the city of New Orleans?
Yeah, again, my mandate as a prosecutor really deals with when the evidence and the facts and the circumstances reach a point of rightness so that a prosecution is mandated, we act. I don't think in terms of the political calculus, particularly, because that's not my job, that is for someone else. But the excellent prosecutors and the law enforcement partners that we have, our jobs are very different. We go after lawbreakers, and especially in this city, public corruption has crippled us for years and years. And this is extremely significant to act when the evidence demands it. And that's what we're doing.
Mr. Simpson, James Fenn at the Times-Picayune.
This is the last question.
Okay, the administration at the bureau level and at the level of the Justice Department is pretty demonstrably refocused away from public corruption investigations. Did that have an effect on this investigation, and did it present any challenges?
I don't, in our office, the reality is that whatever cases we have, if we have sufficient evidence, be it public corruption, be it violent crime, be it financial crimes, we do it. Whether there is an initiative by a particular administration, one way or another, it doesn't make any difference. If we have a crime that we can prove of any sort that is a violation of federal criminal law, that's what we do. We investigate it, we build a case, and when it comes to the point where we feel like we have proof beyond a reasonable doubt of each and every count that is alleged or crime that is alleged within that indictment, then we do our jobs and we prosecute it.
Mr. Simpson, what's the timeline for next steps?
The timeline for next step would be really the timeline. Are you talking about proceeding to court?
I mean, eventually, you've got summits, you've got a couple, what's your next interaction with Mayor Cantrell? And eventually getting to court, what's your timeline there?
Well, apparently the next step would be an arraignment for her. And there's, of course, a bond procedure. And from there, it proceeds as any other federal criminal case would go. There are a plea of clearly not guilty would be entered, as they always are. And then trial dates would be set. Discovery would occur, which is obviously the exchange of documentation and information between the government and the defense and vice versa. And then it goes from there to however it resolves, be it in a courtroom, at trial, or whatever else the options are, a plea or what. And there will be motions, legal motions filed continuously during this process, of course, to shape the direction of the case.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Quick
Thank you,
clarification,
everyone.
sir.
Thank you.
Quick clarification on the text messages.
All right, that of course is acting U.S. Attorney Michael Simpson. He is talking about the historic indictment of Mayor LaToya Cantrell of the city of New Orleans
I
and
think
her
when
former
you read the
bodyguard.
indictment and get a chance to really study it, it'll answer that question for you.
Thank you, everyone.
Seeking detention of the mayor?
Thank
All
you.
right.